back, listeners, to the Cosmic Confluence podcast, where we explore the sacred intersection of science, spirit, and self. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and listeners, today's episode invites all of us to stand at the very center of our own healing journey. Now, let me ask you this: what if the power to create or destroy our our health truly lies within us? What if healing isn't just physical but a radical act of spiritual alignment and mental clarity? Well, joining me is someone who lives this philosophy every day. Listeners, meet Dr. Lara May. She's an advanced practical clinical pharmacist turned functional medicine health coach. Well, she's also an Amazon #1 international best-selling author and founder of the Light Body Healing and Consultant. Now, let me share a bit about Dr. Lara with all of you. After years in emergency care, Dr. Lara took a bold leap away from reactive medicine and toward root cause healing. And today, she helps others radically reclaim their well being and redefine health as something we create, not something we chase. So, with that, Dr. Lara, welcome to the Cosmic Confluence podcast. And I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so Dr. Lara, you talk about the radical responsibility of our health. And that's really something, powerful and a bold phrase. So for someone hearing for the first time, it can like feel blamed. Initially when I got introduced to this, I also feel like, but this is something which, has to be, it's kind of a part of the system. Why should I be always blamed for not taking care of my health? I mean, it's my #1 priority. So how would you define this phrase for all of us?
That's a really good question. So, I want to, for one of my first things and one of my missions is to help us stop blaming ourselves. And
Mhm.
because I feel like when we stop blaming ourselves, we actually step into our power. And, I could totally see how this concept of you're the creator of your own health. Even if
Mhm.
you develop a disease in some way, shape, or form, it could be your own responsibility. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I mean, we are inundated every day with toxins, and that could mean, physical toxins, environmental toxins, emotional toxins, mental toxins, energetic toxins. So, toxins are coming at us from every direction. However, we are in charge of our energetic integrity, our mind, our thoughts, because all of that is what factors in and either creates or destroys our health. Also, sleep, stress, food, obviously, movement or the lack thereof. And so, while I don't necessarily think it's productive to blame ourselves, just like it's not productive to continually walk around in victim mode saying, "Oh, this happened to me." The best thing I think we can do for ourselves is accept where we are lovingly and without judgment and move forward and start to get curious and become our own, health detective in order to start creating our health with intention instead of just moving through this beautiful earth, but still can be toxic at some times, um,
Yep.
unconscious and unaware and, completely just sort of like a ping pong ball, without uh, intention or directed goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely get the sense. It's not basically, blatantly or outrightly putting it out as a blame, but it's more of an ownership. As you mentioned about the intentional outlook towards taking care of our own health, whether it's physical or mental or emotional or spiritual, I mean, energetic. energy. Um, and I think many of us we struggle to make that shift because it's kind of has been embedded in the system. So that definitely totally justifies this shift. And talking about your journey, Dr. Lara, your own journey, it started in the emergency medicine. I mean, uh, high pressure, acute care settings. You have to be on the toes always. What did that environment teach you about health? And what was that moment? There's sometimes it comes like an epiphany or a realization, self-realization that, oh my goodness, I have to change the way I think or I'm into the setting. So what was that moment you realized something was really missing?
Well, for me, it was actually during sort of my own health crisis. And I'll just start off by saying that, I still practice critical care medicine and allopathic
Mhm,
medicine within the healthcare environment here in the US. And so there's definitely a role for it, and it definitely saves lives and, can save us from our darkest day when we're on the brink of life and death. However,
mhm,
when it comes to chronic illness and prevention and actually healing, because healing is different than curing, there are some gaps there that I think that's where functional medicine and the self work and the thought work and the energy medicine can really fill in and complement and take people to that next level. So for me, I found myself, I'd been a chronic migraine sufferer since my teenage years. I was diagnosed with IBS when I was 23.
mm,
And in my late 20s and early 30s, I found myself, working in these high stress, high pace environments, which I loved. They lit me up. But at the same time, they weren't doing me any favors for my health. And slowly but surely, I not only burnt my adrenals out, I, burnt myself out on all levels. And
mm,
I had exhausted all of my Western medicine tools. I was on all the right medicines, supposedly. If you looked at the guidelines, I had all those prescriptions, but they weren't
mm,
working. And so I had to figure out something else. And it came to a pretty critical head at, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, laying on a
mm,
hospital pharmacy floor in the throes of a migraine. And there was nowhere to go and no one else to turn to because there was no one to call in to help me, and I just had to suck it up and deal with it and get through my shift and still take care of other people at the same time. And
mm,
that is when I said, "Something's gotta give, like, this isn't sustainable, this isn't good for me. I'm not fully present here, while I'm at work because of this pain and because of, these imbalances and disease states." So that's when I found Reiki and I found my own functional medicine practitioner and coaching. And after going through all of those different things myself as the patient and the client, I was very impressed with the doors that it opened and the way my mind was opened and the opportunity that I had and the empowerment that I feel like re-gifted to really change my life and take a powerful role and sort of decide for myself how my health and my life was gonna go. And so that's what really instigated me into looking down those same paths for myself as the practitioner, and then also layering things onto that, like yoga and breath work and um, other types of intuitive healing and energy clearing. So, yeah.
mm. I mean, it really hits hard. And then you mentioned that uh, you have had chronic migraine issues. My sister has as well, and you know, most likely, people would think that there are biological reasons triggering migraine, but it's more about either the physical environment, or more probably the internal settings in there? Stress, or sometimes burnout, or too much of negative thinking, tension, anxiety. They really trigger um, the migraine attacks. So you mentioned about energy healing. So since you have been in the Western medicine settings, um, were you initially skeptical about energy, that, or you immediately uh, took your shift to energy healing and started seeing the benefits?
I guess for me, because of, when you're in the science track, like in school, for example, college, medical pharmacy school, nursing school, you have to take a lot of different types of sciences. So you take biology,
Mhm.
of course, but lots of chemistry, but then also physics. And when you're in physics, you learn the laws of thermodynamics, which are essentially also the laws of the universe and how the universe works. And turns out these same laws are also the laws that we use in metaphysics, which is that spiritual side of how the universe works. And so when I was in the very beginning of my Reiki training, and we were talking about, Dr. Matsumoto with the water experiments and the way that Reiki presents energy work to their new practitioners. It just made a lot of sense to me and it clicked, and I realized that they weren't different. They were the same. They were just being presented in a different context. But they really are, you know, s 2 different
Mhm.
sides of the same coin. And so for me, that's also how I like to sort of demystify and reinforce the efficacy and the power that the energetic side has and can have, but we have to allow it. If we're the way the human brain works, we're
Mhm.
very much, and I don't know why this is, but our brain is works the way, like, we're gonna see what we wanna see. And,
Yeah.
and so if we don't wanna see things a certain way, then we're just not. That's not how our brain is going to interpret it. And so you have to be at least open and curious enough to let that little grain of light in. That little flicker of light or the mustard seed or however, how whatever metaphor you wanna use. And that was me, especially at the time because I was so desperate to find a solution. I was willing and open-minded enough to say, "Hey, let's give it a shot," I tried to come in with as few expectations as possible, and I think looking back on it, that really served me well.
That's wonderful, Dr. Lara. Because, some people would say that science should stay in the lab and spirit in the temple. I mean, both the things cannot be intersected, or, they cannot be kind of infusion. So that's a really, really powerful perspective to look at it. And at least, um, even if you are not able to see the benefits, but at least, as you mentioned, you should have that open mindedness to at least look into that, just not outrightly dismissing it. There's nothing like that. Um, Also, Dr. Lara, you work closely with people struggling with type 2 diabetes, and being from India, I mean, we are right now seeing a huge increase of people, youngsters getting affected with diabetes. So how does functional medicine empower them beyond just the blood sugar levels? Because we always connect, okay, diabetes, yeah, don't have sugar. Sugar is the sole kind of demon there. So, what are the emotional or energetic patterns you often see behind this chronic illness?
Well, let me just can I'm gonna start with the functional medicine piece of that first, and then I'll move into the more, energetic and mental piece of it, because I think it's important. Yes, you're right. Sugar is at the core of elevated blood sugar, right? Like, if we're eating carbs, we're eating sugar, that's gonna elevate our blood sugar. However, we know, and this is known in the Western medicine side of as well, it's just not integrated into the treatment approach. So, which is very interesting if you think about it. But from the functional medicine side, functional medicine is a root cause approach to health and healing. And so what do? We look at the human body as a whole system. So it's not just about the blood sugar. We are looking at your insulin levels and what drives insulin levels. Cortisol. What drives cortisol? Stress drives cortisol. And what drives stress? Well, now we're into the mental health piece, the emotional health piece. And what also drives stress? Toxic burden load or exposure to toxins. And so now we start to see this complex picture unfolding of how it's not just about the sugar that you're ingesting, but you have all of these other influences that are telling the body to be stressed. And within that stress response is a cortisol release that then drives the release of sugar from the liver that then drives the increase of insulin through the bloodstream. So that's sort of how, biologically speaking, it it sort of unfolds in the body. But like I said, stress. So again, we've talked about this before. Thoughts, emotions, and so we then that begs the question, okay, well, how do we address these thoughts and emotions, just like you asked? And for me, I think the best place to start is looking at our thoughts, because our thoughts really is what determines our feelings. And this is one of the ways I was trained in my life coaching certification. And so a belief is a thought that we just keep on thinking. So if we have this innate belief that life is hard, one of the mantras that was sort of popular in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up is life sucks and then you die. And so if you think about like the energetic imprint that even just that little saying carries with it, that's pretty impactful. That's not positive, is it? Like, it doesn't feel good when you say that. And so we really have to come to this point of first awareness of what are we thinking and what are we saying, and realize that those thoughts and those words that we speak have a vibration and they carry a frequency. And
Mhm.
one of the laws of the universe, both from the lab in physics and metaphysics, is that
Mhm.
for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so what you put out is what you get back. And so when you are voicing these negative mantras into the universe, then what is the universe going to bring back to you? Something that's of that similar vibration. So another thing that I hear people say a lot is, FML, or F my life. And again, like, that's not a great thing to, if you think about what it really means, like, that's a horrible thing to say to yourself. So, but if that's what you're saying, yeah, even if you're unconscious, that's what the universe is gonna bring back to you, that similar vibration. And so I think it's really important to build that awareness, understand that our thoughts create our feelings, and based on how we feel, that's how we're gonna show up. Those are the actions that we're gonna bring to whatever we're doing. And then from there, we have the results of how does our life unfold. And so we really have, the power lies in those thoughts, and we can change that. We get to choose our thoughts. We are conscious, sentient human beings. We we are not, you know, puppets, or like, you know what I mean? Like, we get to choose. No one's making these thoughts for us. Um, However, we're being fed with a lot of different things all day long through media and social media. So if we're not aware, and we're not deliberately choosing, then there's a lot of things that are not great for us that can become automatic unconsciously.
Mm. So beautifully you captured the essence, Dr. Nara. 'Cause, just a few days back, so my co-host Avik, he shared his story behind this whole idea of doing so many podcasts together. And there's one line he said in there that what you put out comes back to you. So you absolutely captured the circle of life there beautifully. That's really, really beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lara, for saying that.
Yeah. It's simple but powerful.
Yes. It's simple and powerful, and yet, we are so complex creation of the
Right,
hair.
yeah. Yeah, just like how I described the diabetes, like,
Yeah.
where it's sometimes distilled down to the one thing, but it's really not just the one thing.
No, it's not. Ah, well, okay. So a bit of a how to and next steps for our listeners as well to take some
Mhm.
actions from our conversation, Dr. Lara. So, if someone today is now ready to take radical responsibility, um, what's one, or maybe if there are more than small, potent change or changes they can make across their physical, mental, and spiritual bodies, holistically?
I would say probably one of the most simple but impactful things you can do is address your stress. And, how do we do that? And you might say, well, I'm already busy. I don't have time. How can I pile on or factor in one more thing in my day? Are you kidding? Come on. But this is so important that if you don't do it, then you will develop imbalance and inflammation and disease. And so this is where we come back to that radical responsibility and we step into our power and we ask ourselves, what do we want? Do I want to feel good? Do I want to be healthy? Do I want to feel well? If so, then I have to make some choices and I have to decide what I'm going to say yes to and what I'm going to say no to. And no is a complete and healthy and loving sentence. It's one word, but it is the most beautiful boundary we can set for ourselves sometimes. So, in this world of yes, 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 and do, and overdo and overstretch, one of the biggest things we can start to say is lovingly no, or not right now, or we can schedule that for a different time. And because that will free up the next most important piece, if not still the most important, maybe those two things are tied, is creating that space for your self care. So, whether that is journaling in the morning or meditation or yoga or a walk, just somehow starting, you have to start somewhere. It doesn't have to be big, but start with one thing that feels good to you, that helps you set that deliberate intention to move through your day feeling good and with the intention to feel good. And with that intention that no matter what comes up and what tries to knock me off my game, even if I, start to spiral, I can stop it and come back to that feeling good spot or to that tuned in, uh, as Abraham Hicks would say, tapped in, tuned in, turned on spot, right?
Mhm.
So
Oh,
I know that was, yeah. So I would say that's where to start. So start with 5 to 10 minutes every day and pick something that feels good to you that's going to start to feed your soul.
wow. Absolutely. And it's not about perfection,
Oh, yeah. No, not at all.
as the media would portray or the world would portray. Oh my God, you're waking up and gym, eating right, and everything is right. That is not possible. Perfectionism, I have tried it so many times. I give up the second day, and then I feel like, okay, let me just take it step by step, not hastily or put too much pressure on myself, because once again you are putting yourself at that pedestal and you are again getting into that rabbit hole. So I think it's more about, once again, coming back to our first discussion, it's more about the ownership, and that to empowered ownership.
Mhm. Well, even in when I work with clients, whether it's one-on-one or in groups, the first place we start is the stress management piece and the thought work piece. We don't we don't start with, the big huge detox straight away, because if your body is already inflamed and you throw in a detox on top of that, you're most likely gonna feel like crap, and you're not even gonna get through the detox, and you're definitely not gonna wanna do anything else because what I proposed to you didn't help you feel good, didn't help you feel better, you actually felt worse because your body's not strong enough to work through those toxins and excrete those toxins on its own without feeling the repercussions of it, right? And so we have to start with replenishing the body's energetic system, its immune system, its baseline function, which is stress management, before we can move on to those other things, which are super important, like doing a gut healing protocol. But again, if you don't have your stress dialed and tuned in and figured out, then even if we do a gut healing protocol, you're it's just gonna be completely undone then the next time you get stressed out, which honestly, let's be realistic, it'll be like 10 minutes after you get off the session with me, right? Because we haven't started with the baseline work, and that baseline work is stress management and that self-discovery. So, like you said, that radical responsibility in making those choices.
Absolutely. Great. So, Dr. Lara, before we wrap up, if our listeners would like to get in touch with you, what will be the best way to do that?
My website is drlaramay.com, drlaramay.com. I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Lara May and Facebook the same. On TikTok, I'm Dr. Lara May FXNMED, so Function Med. Um, but any of those avenues, you can get in touch with me. You can book a free discovery call directly on my website. So that's why I like to send people there. And we can hop on a call, see where you're at, see, what kind of help you need, and get you started on the path to recovery and creating your own health.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes. And Dr. Lara, thank you. Thank you so much for this potent reminder that healing isn't just something done to us, but it is something born through us, and it is our choice. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate the time.
And to all the beautiful listeners out there, if this conversation has stirred something within you, trust that nudge. Start small, take baby steps, choose one area of your life, whether it's body, mind, or soul, and ask, what would radical love look like here? And to connect with Dr. Lara May, just refer to the show notes along with this episode. Until next time, keep aligning, keep listening, and keep trusting the wisdom within you, within the universe of you. And well, this is Cosmic Confluence, and I'm your host, Sana. I'll see you in the next wave of transformation. Thank you.